Welcome to the Festival of Storytellers. I thank everybody that's involved with this process because we know writers need readers and writers need publishers. Experience is not about the publisher, it is about us, the authors.
Our next featured author of the hour is J. Marcelo Baqueroalvarez. Marcelo is a multi-talented individual hailing from San Francisco de Quito, Republic of Ecuador. After immigrating to the United States in 1995, he embarked on an educational journey that would shape his future. Marcelo graduated from Fort Lauderdale High School and went on to study at the Art Institute of Fort Lauderdale, where he achieved the prestigious honor of magna cum laude in 1999. During his time in the Navy, Marcelo's life took another significant turn where he met his wife, Alicia. Their love blossomed and they were blessed with a daughter named Samantha. As an avid lover of the arts, Marcelo has always been drawn to various forms of artistic expression, including music, graphic art, photography, videography, and writing. He utilizes his unique leadership style to foster growth and unity with his teams, inspiring those around him to reach their full potential. In 2013, Marcelo founded BZ Vision LLC, a platform that allowed him to explore and expand his artistic abilities. He also embarked on the Half-Life Crisis project, where he shares his unconventional viewpoints, grounded in facts for posterity. Marcelo's passion for his craft shines through in all of his endeavors, as he continually seeks to inspire and make a meaningful impact on those around him. Let us all listen to J. Marcelo Baqueroalvarez in his Author of the Hour session.
Hi, welcome to Author of the Hour, Reader's Magnet. Today is January 28th, 2024, and I have the honor of hosting this Author of the Hour session with Jose Marcelo Alvarez. He's a wonderful writer who I enjoy checking out. He's awesome to listen to. He's a wonderful human being, and I can tell that he's somebody who cares about humanity and wants to leave this earth a better place through sharing his wisdom from a unique perspective of this man. So I'm honored to be here in front of you today, sir. How are you?
Lonnie, thank you so much for having me. Thank you to Reader's Magnets. I really appreciate being here, and I'm super excited to be spending this time with you and with the audience today.
Awesome. I don't want to waste a minute of our time. So I want to get through some simple questions like how, as a writer, you are a writer. Our audience wants to know, how did you become a writer?
Well, so different ways, actually. Thank you for the question. I actually always liked to write, even when I was a little kid. Sometimes I found that having a conversation with the keyboard or with something that just needed to get all that noise sometimes in my mind.
How old were you when you consider you wrote your first piece? I'm sorry. How old were you?
You know, probably as soon as I actually learned how to write, which was probably like around 6 years old, there's probably a whole bunch of little pieces and writings and snippets probably lost through history all over the place. And anything that I could find, have like little notebooks and napkins or whatever I could find, I would actually just like jot my notes from the start, since as far as I can remember.
All right. So from 6 years old, you were inspired by things that you heard to write.
I did actually. So my grandmother, she used to call me a little lawyer. So in a
All
way,
right.
I used to choose my words, and sometimes kind of like to make different arguments. Not that I was
Mhm.
an argumentative child. I actually used to get along with people very well, but I was an kind of like a quiet observer, and I would just listen and listen and listen. And if I had something to say, I would talk somebody's ear off. So I figured that sometimes people wouldn't necessarily have the time to just to me talk as much as I wanted to. So I started writing and I started typing. And I became a really fast typer, which helped out a lot with moving
Awesome.
what is in my mind into the page.
Awesome. So we can take away from that you had a natural love for writing.
I
And
have.
probably someone who wants to write should also have some type of love for writing communications.
I do. So, quick, like funny story. So, my mother, she used to what back in the day, when you be a typist, like a mechanographer, like that would have, and she was incredibly fast. And I always had this fascination of how fast, she could just like type and just make that typewriter just like smoke. And I wanted to be like that. And now, fortunately, I can actually do that. I can type as fast as I can think, which either means that I'm a very fast typer or I'm a very slow thinker, either way. But whatever I have in my mind, I can just like jot it up and just like comes out, and I'm very happy that I have
So
that
with
opportunity.
technology now, we type, I type. I like typing, but
Oh
there
yeah.
are voice softwares that can type for us. Do you recommend any of those?
For some people they do, but probably you realize that I have an accent, and sometimes you might miss a couple of the things that I have to say. So
All right. All
yeah,
right. So
even
just
with
something
some
to
of those.
think about.
Yep.
Um, how many hours a day would you say that you write?
Well, that depends. So for my actual job, what I do in the Navy, sometimes I have to write a lot, and by a lot I mean like an insane amount. And
Insane amount.
oh yeah, like we're talking like hours and hours, just like just going at it. But I never get tired about that, which is it is probably one of the reasons why I enjoy it so much is because I can just sit down and just have a conversation with the keyboard, and it just keeps going and keeps going. So depends how much time I have. Sometimes I would be doing that for hours, or sometimes it might not be. Sometimes it's going to be very very short, depending how much time I have. Thank you for Dion.
Is there an author? Is there an author? Someone one of our listeners wants to know who inspired you to write,
So
or at least enhanced your writing.
S- so there's a lot of inspiration that I had throughout the years, and a lot of times it's going to sound almost counterintuitive. I don't necessarily like to read too much for quote unquote fun, but I like to read for a purpose, if that makes sense.
All
And
right.
that's
All
kind
right.
of like my job is, I have to be reading, as I say, insane amount of material, and we're talking like fat stuff that it just keeps
Yeah.
going through that. And when I feel that I have something that it needs to be added to the context, that's when I decide to write. So I'm also very much open to the idea of listening. If there's something that I don't know, if I have a blind spot, I'm going to continue listening. Particularly if something that comes with a baseball bat and blows up my mind with something that I thought that I was correct, but I'm not. I'm very much on board to try to understand what is the other thing that I might have missed, so I can see where the blind spot is, and maybe talk
So,
about it.
so what you're doing right now, what you've done a little bit of so far, is give our listeners the mind of a nonfiction writer. You're an analyst. You're
Yeah,
listening. You're deciphering huge amounts of information in order to get at a little truth. And this is the quest of a nonfiction writer and a
it is.
journalist as well.
Thank you. Yes, my mind is a scary place. If people would see what
I
I
can
actually see,
tell. I
oh
can
yeah,
tell.
yeah. So
Um,
it's it.
and speaking of that, may I ask you this question?
Yes.
What is authoritarianism for you? Would you explain that to our listeners? And why did you choose this topic?
Absolutely. Okay. So, talking a little bit, for the abstract portion. Okay. So, authoritarian is it's the wide concept. So, it's not so much as a black and white thing. Essentially, what it is somebody, either being a person or an entity, wants to rule everybody else without giving them a choice for them to become the person that they're meant to be any longer. Does that make sense? In other
Yes.
words, an authoritarian is going to dictate. That's why you hear sometimes the word dictator. They're going to say, this is how you're going to think, this is how you're going to act, this is how you're going to behave, and this is the way that your life is going to be moving from now on. And you really don't have any saying about that. So that's why authoritarian regimes, they have started from pretty much the beginning of time.
Mhm.
Back then, when there were like some of those really mean monarchs, like those kings and queens and sultans or whatever, that they were just uh,
Consultants. Yeah.
power. Yeah, so that was a form of authoritarianism. But you
Mhm.
can actually see authoritarianism in a different construct, that it doesn't necessarily mean to be a macro level, like such a government. For example, let's say if you have a family unit, and there's a family unit, that there's that one person in the family unit who essentially everybody has to do what that person says.
Mhm.
Otherwise, it's bad news for everybody else. Maybe gangs, for example, those are authoritarian constructs, or a mafia, that type of things. If you talk out of turn, then you're going to face incredibly harsh consequences. So that is what authoritarianism is. So, as I say, it is not very black and white, but it is a very abstract concept. And because it is so abstract, it is so easy to fall traps of that authoritarian propaganda. So a propagandist and an authoritarian, essentially they go hand in hand. The authoritarian is going to have ultimate power, and the propagandist is going to make sure that they can galvanize that power, or to make it palatable.
Okay, let me see if I understand from your work, if I can characterize a little bit. Authoritarianism is a scary place to be, not just for the people subject to the authoritarian, but for the authoritarian, him or herself, because he mostly it's a he is faced with yeah, is faced with or is becomes surrounded by people that are expendable, can't be trusted, and so authoritarianism, in a sense, becomes like a machine. And the mechanics of it is it becomes great, it becomes greater. And eventually, though, it has to explode like a bomb and destroy itself.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, it is going to have a low shelf life, even if that shelf life might actually be moving from one generation to another generation, but
Mhm.
it's always going to end, and it's not going to end well. So, what do I mean by that?
And-
Uh,
right. That is your message. Yes. What do you mean by that?
Absolutely. So this is normally what happens. Authoritarians, they tend to get surrounded by yes men and yes women. Essentially, now their circle of trust is going to become a circle of obedience, if that makes
Yes.
sense. So everybody that is outside that circle is going to become disposable, and everybody that is inside that other circle, that circle of obedience, they have to be very, very, very quote unquote loyal to that person. Otherwise, they're going to find themselves outside that circle, and they're going
Yes.
to become disposable themselves. But the longer that an authoritarian starts having that really small circle of people that are always saying yes to the person, those checks and balances, whenever they do mistakes, and we all make mistakes, to
Mhm.
include authoritarians, they are just going to start making all these miscalculations, but nobody's going to have the guts to tell them, hey, yeah, you're wrong. That is not correct. It's going to go down a certain way. But then also another thing that's going to happen, they're going to become very paranoid of any person who dares tell them what's wrong with them. And that is one of the reasons why I didn't actually in my book talk or call by name any current authoritarians, because there's plenty of them. But authoritarians, they have a tendency to have a very low tolerance for criticism, and
Mhm.
either them or their acolytes tend to be very violent,
Violent.
that
Yes.
they're going to be defending the person. So that's why I didn't mention any authoritarians by name that are alive right now.
Right. And that violence is a manifestation of their loyalty.
That tends to be like this. Okay, so an authoritarian, what is going to be doing, it's ultimately turning rhetoric into action. What does that mean? It
Right.
means that if there's some visceral response, something that is going to make you feel, okay, now I have to be mad about this thing, they're going to exploit it. They're going to find a bias and exploit it. Now,
Yeah.
interestingly enough, an authoritarian does not give a crap about if a person leans to the left or the right side of the spectrum, or whatever other side that they have about what is their what is the worldview. They just want to know, do you agree with me, or do you not agree with me? If you agree with me, let's get you to play on this team, and then I'm going to hold you hostage either by blackmail or some other ways to keep you loyal to me. Otherwise, you become disposable. And if you're on the other side, first we're going to try to see if we can bring you to our team. But if we cannot do that, then they're going to try to discredit them. There's going to be
Yes.
sequiturs. There's going to be different ways to actually poison what's called poison in the well,
Mhm.
making it very hard for somebody else to try to take the other person seriously. But
Now, this is part of the message of your book, right? The overall message that you want your readers to take away.
that is one of those portions, yeah, because one of the things, of course, I'm actually telling how the situation actually exists in the world and
Mhm.
how it can be measured. So I actually cite a few authoritarians from the Bolshevik Revolution up to the
Mhm.
90s, and I think the last one is Pinochet. So you can actually see how it can actually go from one side of the political spectrum to another side of the political spectrum, but also what was the geopolitical situation that put those people in power in the first place. So that is one portion. And most importantly, the book actually tells you how to break free from that.
Oh,
So, yeah, exactly, because it doesn't really do you too
so
much to repeat all the craziness that probably can people be looking about in the historical documentaries and all the information that exists. My intent is to actually tell people this is how you flip propaganda on its head. This is how you can actually break free. And not just seeing if somebody else has been falling victims of propaganda, but have we fallen victims of propaganda, or we actually starting to lose that focus. And the reason why I say we is because even I can include myself on that, because it is a perishable skill. It is part of human nature that we're going to have a bias or start moving one way or the other based on what is known as the echo chamber. Somebody's going to be believing with what we are believing right now. If my mom, my dad, my pastor, my uncle Tim, and everybody else there believe this thing, they cannot all be wrong, right?
right. Yes.
Yeah,
And you
no,
talked about this and how it's counterintuitive to
exactly,
not believe what all the people around you believe, how
exactly.
dangerous that is in society, and how frightening it is, and brave one can be from breaking out in it. And that's you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Well, what we are really in all this together, and as I say, I'm not really saying anything that wouldn't be not available out there. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to summarize it in a way that is going to be easy to digest. But this book, if you see my book, it's actually not a super fat book, and I even chose a particular font size to make it very easy and very palatable as
All
far
right.
as
Nice.
people are going to be reading it. And the reason is because it's meant to be read several times over.
Hmm.
As you're going to be, it is going to be a little bit of a challenging reading in some way. It's written easily, but so it's easy to read, but it is going to be bringing some concepts that some people are going to find that is going to be a little bit more challenging than for others.
How many languages and countries is your book in right now? That book.
Right now, it is only in English, but depending on how it actually goes, we might actually do another version in Spanish. Probably is going to be the next one, and then we're going to see how it actually continue moving. The reason what I wanted to keep on one language is for several reasons. The first reason is because the most people don't actually realize that the grammar is directly linked to the culture.
Hmm.
So, very huge difference between translating and interpreting.
Yes.
So even when I wrote the book, whenever you get to see it, there's hundreds of Easter eggs in that book, and there's a
Hmm.
lot of symbolism. Anything from the cover to the design to the font to the size of the font, everything has a reason to do that. Even the quote unquote, like would be typos and stuff, is a litmus test in many ways that
Hmm.
is designed to pair intellectual honesty with critical thinking. So
Yeah.
that is the reason why I first wanted to do it in English, because even though it has a strategic redundancy and it has a strategic lexicon and a strategic type of use of words in certain places, it is a lot harder than to change that from one language to the next without actually having the same impact. So I probably do it as I say the next one in Spanish because of the differences on the language, and because it also happens to be my first language.
Yes. Yes. Now, with all of this redundancy and your particular way of crafting things, and from a business perspective and an artist, are you also a magician?
I'm not a magician, but I am an analyst. I'm an artist, though. That if I
Yes.
would consider myself that, I
Yeah. Because
love
there's an
making.
art to what you do, even though it's nonfiction.
Oh yeah,
You're
it,
artistically putting the work together.
thank you. I as I said before, my mind is a scary, scary world. People could actually see how I actually see the world is very abstract. So
Yeah.
try to bring it into some type of coherence. That then I try to use art because then I can actually make it a little bit easier, to see what I'm actually trying to project.
Now that you've become a writer, now that you know several of the things you know about the world, and you've seen uniquely firsthand some things from being a senior chief in the Navy and being on the ship. What is the name of that ship?
I'm in the USS Cole, the world famous USS Cole. That's the same ship that was
Oh, yes.
hacked by violent extremists in 2000.
Yes,
So
in Yemen,
very, very
right?
simple. Yeah, it's an honor to be on that vessel.
Yes, I know. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Yes. And what I have to say about that is all the information you've gathered and you've became a writer, and what you've done with a writer is what you've done with a writer. And now in your profession, what do you think of your profession now
My profession in the Navy
as a writer?
as a writer. Okay, so to me, it's kind of like a natural change as far as what I wanted to do. And as I said before, for my job, I have to write and read an insane amount of information, so I enjoy it. So it's it is a fabulous thing for me. But as a writer, really, what I want to do is write what I find that it's the correct answer, regardless of what the platform that is sponsoring me wants me to say, what is the message that they want to put. Does that make sense? So
Yes.
that is, for example, another reason why I did self-publishing. And the reason I'm not going to be mentioning any names, okay, as far as like who was actually bringing it up over there, it was not Reader's Magnet, it was somebody else. And they wanted to not just get rights to the manuscript, but they also wanted to have some rights to edit some of the content that I was saying. And I
You
said,
didn't
like,
like
"Oh, no,
that? No.
probably sold a lot more books, that way, but that's not what I wrote this book for. I wrote this book because I wanted to transmit a particular message, and I wanted to make sure that I was able to control that message in a way that it was not going to be getting my words out of context. That is another reason why there's like hundreds of Easter eggs. That's why there's a reason why I use certain type of lexicon. That's why there is some strategic added redundancy in some places. So then it is very hard for anybody who tries to use my words against me out of context, because
Mhm.
everything that I'm talking about is going to be consistent to my message, and that's my type of writing. That is my writing style, and those are my principles of how I want to put them out.
So, in what you just gave us, the audience, you said one very important thing about being a strong writer is reading. You read a lot. So that I just want to stress that to our audience.
Oh yeah.
Reading is more important than the writing. You should be doing at least half of your reading as you are writing. If you write a book, you better have read several,
Oh
right?
yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
The
Oh,
other
I
thing is
cannot begin
another.
to tell you how much I've been reading.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And another thing is the way your mind's working. You have this artist and producer going on in your head at the same time, where as an artist, you're saying, my stuff's not changing. I'm self-producing for that reason. I want control. Our audience needs to know that control and marketing and everything of your product is part of self-publishing. That's one of the benefits of self-publishing.
Yes.
So yeah, again, you're brave for going that route because your material is definitely good enough to get you a contract somewhere
Thank
where
you.
you will make 4% or so on your book, whereas I'm sure you're making a lot more than that now. And all we need is the correct marketing, a strong marketing behind us to help us be financially successful with the book. But I applaud you for keeping your art as you see it, keeping your work as it is. It's more than art. It's your research. It's your findings. It's what you're leaving us when
Thank
you
you.
leave. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, the other thing is because I would not want to put my name on that unless I knew that I stand by that.
But you still
So,
did the work.
Exactly. Well, this is the
Yeah.
thing, is if I'm putting my name to say, okay, I did this thing and I believe on this thing, I
Yeah.
am not the kind of person that is going to be hiding behind an anonymous avatar. There's going to
Right.
be something that say like, okay, I'm standing by what I'm saying, so I'm going to be
That's
very
you.
careful about what I'm saying.
Hmm.
Yes.
So you have integrity is a very important thing
Thank you.
about writing. Yes, and you have that. Um, Now I know we were supposed to take a break at 14 minutes, and we're 25 minutes in. Are we still looking to take that break? If so, let's do it now.
All right.
Wait, before we take that break, hang on. Before you click that button, we need to know that Jose Marcelo Baqueroalvarez's website is halflifecrisis.com. And he also has a Facebook page under the same name, halflifecrisis.com.
Mhm.
So check out his website. Also, you should know I am host of Lonnie's show on YouTube and also on Facebook. And my website is themoorish-american-institute.com. Again, our author of the hour, Mr. Baqueroalvarez's website is halflifecrisis.com and
Yeah,
Half-Life Crisis on Facebook. Check those out.
like that. Yeah. Half-Life Crisis.
Follow because those clicks mean something to us. We appreciate them. So give him that like and that follow.
Awesome. Yep. It seems that there's no breaks actually for the author of the hour, so we can continue chatting. So
Oh, all right. All right. Well,
yeah, it works out.
all
Thank
right,
you
cool.
thank you for the plug.
Oh, yeah,
That
yeah.
works out perfectly. So
I was
yeah.
told to do that. It's
Oh,
part
that's
of the
perfect.
program.
Hey, that works out. Hey, I appreciate the plug anytime. So,
Yeah, we have to do that for each other because if we don't, who will?
absolutely. Well,
Or-
one of the things, for that I like to say particularly about for Half-Life Crisis, because I do write long form articles all the time about the stuff that I'm talking about. For this particular topic, the best format was actually to put it in a book. But I like to say that I'm not actually trying to sell a book. I'm trying to transmit a message. And
Yes.
for anybody who would like to listen to me, talk to them, for 19 chapters, I'll do that, but
Right.
that's not enough time, to mathematically do that. So that's why it's actually put in book format. But
Exactly.
all those articles, they exist, for a reason, because
People
I
ask me
really
for
want
class.
to do that.
I'm
Mhm.
sorry.
Oh, sorry.
I didn't mean to interrupt you. Sometimes there's a time lapse
Mhm.
and like the camera, your camera, the other person's camera might actually freeze. And that's what happened right now. And I thought you had stopped talking.
No problem. Thank you.
All
Oh,
right.
hopefully somebody's saying, if they make a documentary in this book, thank you so much. Hopefully, I will be making a video a little bit about that. So hopefully I'll get a chance, to put something a little bit longer. Thank
I
you for
read
that.
that you worked in multimedia before you joined the Navy.
Hmm?
So
I
has
have.
that helped with your webpage development, with your thoughts towards production of a film?
Yes, thank you. So yeah, I graduated from the Art Institute for Lauderdale back in
Oh,
1999. When still,
uh,
digital was in its infancy.
right, right.
But yeah, we did own multimedia and video production company in Fort Lauderdale back up there. Did that for 6 years before I joined the Navy, and I also own a web development company now. Actually, that is 10 years old. It's called BC Vision LLC. So and
Busy
www.
vision.
Yeah,
Busy vision.
vision.com. Yep, that
Right.
is yeah, because that's my nickname, BZ, because Baquero Alvarez
Busy.
letters.
Busy.
Yeah, so long.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, we do web development, and I wanted to create a different type of web development company that it was not having any crazy hidden fees and all kinds of other additional stuff that you think that is free, but it's not free. Keeps adding up. So I like to
Mhm.
be very straightforward. Okay, this is what you get if you pay for this. You get this and blah 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 blah, and this is the process. So that's kind of I did that. So that helps me out because now I actually understand how that works. But for instance, BC Vision is the engine that powers Half-Life Crisis. So if you like how
Got it.
Half-Life Crisis
Got it.
that was
Yeah, I'll
that
check
was.
out Busy V. All right.
Mhm.
I will. Yes, I definitely will.
And there's links, of course, in my website in Half-Life Crisis. Like for all that, it's kind of like all this busy universe. So
All right, cool,
yeah,
cool. I will be checking that out.
thank you.
I would like to talk about hiding in plain sight. I was going to ask you, I was going to pose the semi-difficult question to you, and I know you'd be able to handle it. But I was going to ask you after complimenting you on you're an awesome writer with awesome intentions, and you have a wonderful message that deserves to be heard. I was going to ask you what makes you different than other writers who also deserve to be heard, but you answered with you have a solution to this propaganda thing. You have a way out of it.
Yes.
And I wanted to know how hiding in plain sight relates to that.
Okay, thank you. That's an awesome question. So, if you see the table of contents for authoritarianism and propaganda, the puppet master tools, the first chapter speaks about hiding in plain sight. So that is the first thing. And the reason why is the first thing is because the authoritarians, they thrive in a place that it's hidden in between the cracks. You know, if that makes sense. Okay.
Mhm.
So it is the easiest place to hide is in plain sight, because our minds actually, they don't process everything that happens in front of us. We just make us some logical shortcuts based on some of the information as far as what we're doing, what we're not doing, and whatnot. So, for example, there's a whole bunch of things that are really spying on us, hopefully just to try to sell us stuff, but I'll give you an example. It's like a part of social engineering in advertising. If you're like,
they don't do that.
Like then all of a sudden you see, like an advertisement, for cat food.
Right.
That it's going to be showing that the algorithms are always listening. You're going into a search engine, and looking for something, and all of a sudden shows up in your Facebook or in your Twitter or whatever. That's
some of us know that now. Yes.
Yeah. So that's a little bit, something similar with authoritarianism and propaganda. Happens something similar, but a much larger scope. So that means that somebody's always paying attention. Somebody's actually trying to see what is your reaction.
Mm-hmm.
Either positive or negative towards something. And if you like that reaction, then they're probably going to feed you a little bit more of that to see how far you would be able to continue chasing that particular lead. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So let's not talk, for example, that is authoritarianism, but just like to give an example. Let's say that you like chocolate, okay? And say like, okay, cool, so they're going to give you all these brands of chocolate. Okay, cool, and now you see, okay, I prefer this one. That one has nuts. That doesn't have nuts. This one has caramel. This is dark chocolate. I don't like dark chocolate. I don't like white chocolate. Ooh, but I like this one, that has, kind of like these little more nuts. So they want to give you a little bit more of that. Now they changed a little bit of different type of nuts, so now it has only cashews, and it has like some walnuts, and it just keeps kind of like moving to that point until they see that they don't like something, and now they start just giving you more of that that particular chocolate brand that you have, and more options through that. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Because that means that they're able to narrow down from this amount of information, this little bit about that, and now they say, okay, this little part of that type of chocolate is going to be so enticing for you that maybe we're now going to be giving you a group of other people who love that type of chocolate, and everybody else who speak bad about that chocolate, they're crazy.
Yeah, I see that. Yeah. I can give examples of how that's worked in socially, morally, religiously, politically.
Yeah, sadly, well, really, anything that can actually divide us can be a catalyst. Sadly, politics and religions, they're very strong catalysts, and that's why a lot of times authoritarians are actually going to be pinging on that. Now, this is actually interesting because authoritarians themselves, sometimes they don't actually profess or even follow the religions that they're supposedly be championing.
Right.
They utilize that because they know somebody is going to be using those particular religious or political views.
Their followers.
Last consequence, even if it is
people who like the chocolates with the particular nuts.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Ooh, and don't they're talking about the other chocolates, because those are crazy people,
So. Yeah, right, exactly. I have a question about your choice for picking history from the Bolshevik Revolution to post-World War II, and I was kind of wondering how much do you talk? If I know you talked a little bit, I can imagine. Well, I got to be honest with our audience here. I've read the book.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
How much do you talk about? You can share this with the audience. The idea of how the world powers that be are supposed to be checked post World War II versus pre World War II, is there a difference in how morally uh, people are supposed to be behaving and powers are supposed to be checked?
So that's a really good question, and also to Olivia, thank you so much. I'm glad that you're hooked in authoritarianism, for the message on the screen. Um, so authoritarianism, the reason why I actually chose those topics is because from the Bolshevik Revolution, of course, that is what started the Soviet Union after Nicholas II, who was an authoritarian himself, but Lenin, who was essentially the father of Soviet of the Soviet Union, not of communism. So
Right,
we're not talking about Karl Marx. What he actually,
right.
some of notions from that. What he really actually wanted to do was to create a very utopia, where essentially all the people were going to be as equal as possible. That's what they were, the proletarians. So essentially kicking the Tsar, because the Tsar was not a really nice person at all,
Right.
and they tried to give power to the people, of
And
course.
Tsar, for our listeners, Tsar means Caesar, right?
Yeah, so the Tsar, yeah, so it
Yeah.
was like the monarch
Mhm.
from Russia at the time. So which
Yes.
Russia actually looks a little bit different, also, like back in those days. But
Mhm.
anyways, the 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 problem is that a lot of people who were not necessarily sharing quote unquote Lenin's vision, and I'm not saying that I agree with Lenin's vision, but Lenin himself was actually a wealthy person, or was coming from a wealthy family, even though was actually trying to give everybody
Yes.
like some sort of equality. But
Yes.
because there were a lot of other people that they have a lot of different agendas, particularly Stalin, who was his successor for that, they started to implant certain people in certain positions of power. That was what the Stalin was doing, and that was happening under Lenin's nose. And
Mhm.
pretty much everything that Lenin was doing, essentially, to try to equalize that,
Mhm.
Stalin, he just erased it and changed that. And that's why when he created those communal farms, and he started creating that new industrialization, even though it was not necessarily done correctly, but it's because he had loyalist places in in certain areas.
Mhm.
Now, in the book, I actually chose from that time is because a lot of people that actually were under communism, even under Stalin, they're still alive today. They're pretty old now,
Yeah.
but they're still alive today. And I went all the way up to like the 90s, around with Pinochet, because there's still people that either still love or hate Pinochet, depending on what it was, but
Mhm.
also because it sees two very different parts of the political spectrum. We're talking, of course, the communism, you have like extreme left, and when you're talking about the Pinochet, he was actually extreme right. So it doesn't matter, which side, as far as that. Whenever it gets too far into the political extremes, it is image of the same monster. In other words, if
Mhm.
you speak out of turn, they're going to kill you and everything you ever loved. That's
Yeah.
what authoritarianism end goal is. They want only people who are very loyal to you, and if you're not loyal, well, sad day for you. They're going to eliminate you in some way.
That's one of those strategically placed redundancies. They'll
Yes.
kill you and they'll kill you everyone you love.
And unfortunately, I had to bring that distinction because the tactics are very similar. I mean, the names and the regimes, they change a little bit, but this has been going on pretty much from the beginning of time. I could have started the book from the times of Alexander the Great if you wanted,
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
but
And before
it is
and
far away.
anything. Yeah.
Yeah, so I didn't want to create these notions and like, well, that only happened like way back then. Okay,
Right,
but I
right,
wanted
right.
to get it too close to where we are now, so I would get shot in the face by some authoritarian that is contemporary. Okay, so I didn't want to run the risk. But the same situations that we were able to see back then, they happen. They're happening right now. Actually, some things that we saw that were indicators for World War II, very much happening for a while. And the same thing, it didn't happen overnight. It takes
Yeah.
a long time to brew. It takes a long time for some of those visceral responses to grow inside a person's psyche. And again, that's why a lot of the times the authoritarians, they're going to be pinging onto the younger generations, because then the younger generations are going to forget what's going on with with the people. Uh, that is the most insidious thing that the authoritarians and the propagandists do. They try to turn good people into monsters,
Hmm.
and I can tell you actually how that happens. Okay, so we're going to do a very quick exercise here.
All right.
So just imagine, you don't have to answer this, okay, but just for the audience, okay, just for
All right.
yourself. Just think about a time that you were really mad. But I'm not talking about, like being super mad. I'm just talking about furious rage, that when you would be able to lose control, but there was something or somebody who stopped you from doing something that you would later regret. But what if that furious rage is not only condoned, but is actually rewarded and is considered morally superior to do those actions against another person? That's why authoritarians, they tend to separate people first and then dehumanize a segment of the population. Because when they do that, then it's very easy to actually see, okay, they are not people. They are not people. They are something else. They are have been dehumanized. When that happens, everything starts going downhill for the segment of the population that is disenfranchised, and then the other group feels morally superior to actually start to talk bad about some people, to demonize them, to find all kinds of flaws and anything else. But the reality, and what I speak about in the book, is that funny thing, we're more similar than dissimilar. We all cry, we all laugh, we all love, we all get angry, we all have, like a moment, that we are under at certain levels of stress. Sometimes we're going to be elated. So whatever, is the situation. We all have those different feelings.
We're
This
human.
environmental, yeah. So sorry. Yeah, this is how the environmental factors that happen into a person, how there's going to be changing the reality. And I say factors because they are multipliers.
Yes. Now, let me ask you, what does your family think of all of this information that you've compiled and are sharing?
But thank you so
Well,
much. So I have to give a shout out to my wife, particularly. She's my best fan, and she's the love of my life, and she's incredibly supportive. So
and an avatar there
um,
behind you.
yep, she's on the other side of the screen. Yeah, she gives me the good and the bad and the ugly, if I'm actually on point, or if I'm actually losing a little bit of particularly idiomatically, if it actually makes sense what I'm trying to say or not. So
Hmm. Hmm.
mhm.
We
So
got a question. Can you
mhm.
provide examples of contemporary authoritarian regimes using propaganda to manipulate public opinion and suppress dissent?
Ooh, yep. So
Do
yes, I
you see
can,
this
and
type of
I'd
government
rather not.
rising and proliferating again in the future? Yeah.
Yes. So yes, I can, and as I said before, I'd rather not, and there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
Authoritarians, they have a tendency to have a very
It will
very
kill you and everyone you love. Strategically
exactly, and
placed
I don't need, to have
redundancies.
an authoritarian or their acolytes to come and start like chasing me with bullets or anything else, because
Right.
they felt insulted, or tried to put some type of slander or anywhere other ways, but they do exist. What I will say is that whenever you actually see some type of propaganda or type of information, okay, it is always very important to see who else agrees with that propaganda. And I'm not talking, let's say, let's use the United States of America for example, okay, and I'm not going to say left or right, okay, just say, whatever is the politician or the groups or the media that are actually talking about, and they're for or against a particular narrative. Now
Mhm.
look at what the narrative that they're talking about, and now on your own, even using a VPN or anyways, try to find out what is the official narrative for a country that is adversarial to the United States of America. Now
Mhm.
you're actually going to be able to find out, okay, are they actually saying something that is good for the United States of America, or are they parroting something that is already being used as either propaganda, or is being used as a particularly worldview for another country? Does that make sense? Hope
Yes.
that answers the
This is
question.
the work of a nonfiction writer. This
Yes,
is the labor that one has to go through in order to have integrity and present well to the world.
definitely.
Mhm.
So there's a good question over here. Do you think
Excuse me.
authoritarianism has potential impact in our cultural system? Yes. If we're talking about, like potential, if it is happening, it's actually happening. There's authoritarian narratives that are happening right now.
Right now,
Why in
in
Half-Life
multiple
Crisis,
countries.
it happens, and unfortunately, you don't
It
have.
happens in micro locations too, doesn't it? Like in political groups and
Oh yeah,
churches and
oh yeah.
mosques and
So, so, So this is the insidious part, as I was saying, is because good people could actually be turning to monsters, and they are going to be doing something that is against their best interest. So the potential, and to answer your question, to the person that I was asking, I like to give this example. It is a lot like having that ex lover. Okay, that we all had, or most of us, had, the person that we're in a relationship, and everybody say like, "Hey, that's not a good person for you. They're cheating on you. They're stealing from you. They're doing whatever other stuff. It's a toxic relationship." And we don't go, no. To all the people who love us, it's like, no, well, I'm not going to listen to you guys. Even if you have good intentions, I'd rather be wrong, but I love that person. I love that person. And then you just continue going into this toxic relationship until at some point it becomes not reconcilable enough,
Hmm.
or you just have to realize what everybody's been telling you for a long time, and now you have to come clean and say like, but what you were telling me actually had some merit. That is what I'm talking in the book. That is that intellectual honesty portion.
Hmm.
But instead of actually having to hit that brick wall, when it is going to be hurting, then hopefully you're going to be able to identify what other people are actually trying to tell you before it is too late. And the reason is because nobody likes to be told that they're wrong. Nobody likes to be told whenever they know that they're in the wrong situation. It hurts. That's
Yeah.
I use the ex-lover analogy, is because a lot of people, if you're infatuated with a person, somebody tells you, "Hey, this person is bad for you, is cheating on you," you're just going to be blinded to that.
Right. It's something that they
Yeah.
can't see that you can see, and what your words become
Yep.
a challenge to their intellect.
Yeah, but it's
Because
not only
they've
that, it's
seen you
because
for
you
so long.
also feel it. You can probably feel it that
Yeah.
that person is cheating on you,
Yeah.
that it is going bad, but you are investing so much, and you're going to be doing all these mental gymnastics to try to uh, pretty much
Fix
say,
it.
well, I don't like the way that they talk to me. I don't like the way that they're cheating on me. I don't like the way, that dissing me. I don't like the way they're ignoring me, the way that they ghosting me, whatever, like the problem.
Hmm.
But we give them that pass because they are so important to us, and we give them permission to have that importance. So in the book, what I'm actually trying to do is hopefully make it a little bit easier, for some people, to realize that that actually happens. And the most important thing is that if that happens to a person, it's fine. Okay, it's fine. It's normal. It is designed to be that way.
Hmm.
Propaganda is designed to be palatable. Is designed to be made it in a way that is actually going to be hard for a person to realize that they are actually having this situation essentially destroying their own lives. Does that make sense? It
Yes,
is designed
definitely.
to be that way. It's easy to
Definitely.
fall in the trap. So if they have, it's fine. It is just how you actually break up from that trap. That's the important part.
Now, is that part of escaping the propaganda and the mirage of the authoritarian?
That is part of that, yes, because one part of escaping, it's the worst enemy that we have is the person between our own ears.
Yes.
That's who we need to actually convince if we are actually doing the right thing or we're not doing the right thing. So if we can escape from that, that is intellectual honesty. That's why it has to be going with critical thinking and intellectual honesty together. Ooh, there's another cool question here.
Uh, can authoritarianism coexist with elements of democracy? And if so, what are the implications for the political stability of a country?
So the hardest truth is that it is coexisting.
Yeah.
It is actually unfortunately coexisting. Uh, Authoritarians are trying to kick democracy out of the picture. That's the difference. They're coexisting until they actually can get enough power in order to actually push them out of the way. And most of the times, what had happened, and I speak, like with the 14 or so authoritarians that I have in chapter 6, so I talk about that. A
Mhm.
lot of them, they were democratically elected.
Yes.
They were actually, yeah, somebody said like, oh yeah, this person, pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Adolf Hitler was democratically elected.
He was, but
Yeah.
he changed then the constitution. He was the
Yeah.
chancellor, and then he started, like moving all this stuff, like trying to get rid of the other powers that would actually be giving the checks and balances. That's what he started doing. So start doing that.
Right.
Another example is, for instance, in a little bit early, later onto the period of time, Mobutu. So he was actually, not necessarily, but actually, let's talk a little bit about Chavez. Okay, Hugo Chavez,
Chavez. All right.
Venezuela. Okay? So, it's probably more known. So Hugo Chavez, he was actually elected 4 times.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Officially.
and then he died of cancer in the last time. But what happened was that on his first term, he was pretty moderate. So he actually got reelected with a very high margin. He was on his second term when he started doing a lot of the changes that pretty much started dictating a lot of the other countries that were actually following suit.
Mhm.
So that's what I'm saying. It is going to be taking a little bit of a process until it actually starts galvanizing the process. So hopefully that answers the question as far as how democracy can actually be intertwined somehow. But authoritarian is always bad. Yeah, it's always bad. They'll take control of your life and everything you ever own and everything you ever love to.
That was a well informed. That was an answer from a well informed man to that
Thank you.
question. There. Yes, yes. Um, I like how you present to the audience the professionalism of presenting topics that you may not agree with, but that as a writer and a researcher, we have to present our findings. We have a responsibility to present what we find, whether we agree with it or not.
Yes.
Could you talk a little bit to the audience about that?
Yeah, so this is the thing. We are all susceptible sometimes to follow a shiny object and think that we are the end all be all of the truth. But that's exactly what an authoritarian wants us to think. Going back to the cognitive dissidence, going to our echo chambers, sorry, going to that point where we feel that only us hold the truth and nobody else does. But this is the funny thing, when we have diversity, when we actually have more than one opinion that is not in its own bubble, then we actually continue growing. We get to see something that is new. We get to see something that is different. And I'll give you an example. And I actually talk in one of my books, as far as that. The rotary telephones, if we remember, we have like the little spinning
Yeah,
wheel,
yeah,
that worked fine. Okay.
yeah.
But if we would still be continue doing that thing in the same bubble that everybody wanted to keep that rotary phone, we wouldn't have the technology that we have now.
Right,
Somebody have to actually fight to get to that point,
right.
but it was going to be disrupting somebody's industry, and that was going to be very inconvenient. So that's
Yeah,
very important for us to really see, okay, am I actually getting trapped in that bubble, or can I actually start leaving that bubble and become more well-rounded? And more importantly, am I being intellectually honest?
yeah, yeah. Awesome. Um, the most loyal person is disposable. I'd like to touch back on that subject for a second. Um, and talk. I mentioned the mechanics of authoritarianism, and part of the most loyal people are, the most important part of that mechanic, of that mechanism. So, what would you have to say to the most loyal person next to the authoritarian?
That's a really good question. And this here, I'm going to be looking right at the camera. You are also disposable. He does not care about you. If he did something bad to the other guy, you're next.
Yeah. And we've seen some of that here in this nation recently with this government. We have seen some infighting
It
from all sides.
it happens, unfortunately, and this is really what the authoritarian actually really wants us to do. And we can actually talk. It's something sometimes extrinsic to what we do. So let's talk about, let's say, in the U.S. Okay, left and right, they don't like each other, and they just keep getting farther and farther away from each other. Who wins? Well, it's
Nobody.
not Americans. It's
No.
whoever wants to bump America off number one spot in the world and create a new standard. That's who wins. But they can only win if we give them permission. And by the way that they make us do that is get so mad at each other so we stop talking to each other, and get so frustrated and not really wanted to understand what the other person is going to say. That doesn't mean that we have to agree with what they're saying, but we have to understand what they're actually saying, not from a pretty talking head, but from their own mouth, so we can actually understand what is the situation that is driving them to make those decisions, and
Mr.
that
McCall,
actually win.
I agree. I agree. 100%. Mr. Baqueroalvarez, I want to know, if you were not a writer, what would you be doing with this energy?
Ooh, I would be I like singing.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Would you sing about? Would you sing about
all kinds
social
of stuff,
stuff?
Oh, sometimes I just have like all my fun, like little equipment, here, it's like I just like playing music and
All right.
just whatever my heart, contents. Much like I like writing, like when I sit by the piano or like the guitar and or anything else, I just have conversations with the instrument, and sometimes they get really really long.
All right, all right. Would your, as a musician, would your music have social and or moral messages?
So I normally, when I write songs, funny thing, I normally write whenever I'm actually really sad, which is kind of sad,
Oh,
to say.
all
Yeah,
right.
when it happens. But a lot of times, for me, also music is, if I'm singing, I just sing whatever I feel that it, it is going to bring me out of whatever rut, that I have. It just lifts me up. It's probably because you breathe more, when you're singing. So.
Mhm. If you were given a chance, let's say this ball is the world. If you were given a nation on Earth to rule, what
Ooh.
would be your first policy?
Oh man. That is a that is a loaded question. Okay, so so that would kind of like go against what I want to do, which is talk against authoritarianism. So, what I would probably say is mutual respect. So for people, to
Respect.
have
All right.
mutual respect, as far as understanding that each person is unique and each person actually contributes to the greater good, and that we all have something of value that actually brings to that, but not to make it in a way that is just going to be a small group of people controlling everybody else, or just a small group of people just taking care of everybody else, if that makes sense. Okay,
Yeah.
try, and this is not the same as socialism, this is not the same as communism. Okay, so like to dispel as far as that, but really that is what America is actually supposed to be like. That is actually the concept, of America. So if
Yeah.
it would be like that, it would be try to do that, but dialed up a lot of this partisan rhetoric that has been going on for a long time, and really start remembering that we cannot be held accountable for what our ancestors did that it was wrong, but we're very much accountable for the decisions that we take today.
Definitely, definitely, especially knowing our ancestors' history and that the sins of the father do pass down to the sins of the son, so to speak. Sometimes the benefits,
Hmm.
um, but yeah, we often, some of us are responsible for the sins of our father because we are benefiting, or some have are benefiting from the backs of other peoples. We
that
know
that
that.
is yeah, there's a way to put it
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
What's been your favorite aspect of being a writer?
Oh, that's there's so many. So to choose one, it would be that I can speak my mind.
All right.
Yeah,
Can I
that's
interrupt you for a
important.
second? There, because I meant to comment something else too
Yes.
about what you said. To be respectful, to
Hmm.
mutual respect. That's similar to the Buddha. The first principle of Buddhism is do no harm.
Yeah, I heard about that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, do you also believe in reincarnation?
Not necessarily, but
If you did, I was going to say you're Buddha.
well, I'm not that cool. No, no, no,
All
not at
right.
all. But
But
uh,
your mind is well.
definitely, but what I am very well versed on theology. So I have studied extensively all kinds of religions, and particularly, being an analyst, I
Yes.
rather want to be very pragmatic as far as how I actually see the world. That doesn't necessarily mean that I condone or condemn anybody's religion. I'm happy that everybody would
Mhm.
be able to become the person that they're meant to be, and that's the important thing. My commitment to anybody else that I come across is help them become the person that they're meant to be in,
Yes.
in any way that they do. But that means, that it's the person is for themselves.
Yes.
You cannot impose that to somebody else.
Yes.
So if
Yes.
it works for them, awesome. Make them good people, awesome. Super happy with that. The moment you start imposing that in somebody else, not cool.
Yes. I
My view.
agree.
Yeah.
Mr. Bacaro Alvarez, we have about 60 seconds left, and I was wondering if in that 60 seconds you could talk about the ability to analyze as a benefit for a writer.
So yes, the best way is really to making sure that we understand what we really want to talk about, and making sure that we understand what are our dark and blind spots, because we all have that. So before we actually put something in pen and paper, or want to actually release that notion, that we really understand what we know and what we don't know, and be able to be clear about, I'm giving this information based on what I know, and this is what I haven't learned yet, so we don't lose that objectivity.
Awesome. Awesome. This has been an inspiring session. Mr. Baqueroalvarez, we need more open voices like yours in the world, says Olivia Brown.
Thank you so much.
All right, we are at the end of our discussion with this author of the hour, Jose Marcelo Baqueroalvarez. And, I like to say just a little quick comment. Baqueroalvarez is cultural, and we're talking about respect. And the man's name is Baqueroalvarez. Baquero is your mother's name. Alvarez is your father's name, and that's cultural.
The other way around. The other way around.
The other way around?
Yeah.
Oh.
Close enough.
Yes, right. But
yes.
Father's name comes first, Baquero. And Alvarez is your mother's name. And where are you from, sir?
I was born in Ecuador. So,
Ecuador is like Mexico is like other places all throughout most of America where we respect our women as well as our men, in particular our mothers as well as our fathers, because in our lineages we carry their names with us. That's very important and something that a lot of people in the United States would like to just cut off and say, well, which one's your real last name? Is it this one or is it this one? And you have evaded that problem by removing the hyphen and forcing people to respect Baqueroalvarez.
Thank you. Yes.
For that, sir.
So really quickly, before was over there, it was actually the U.S. Navy. They put it together, and I appreciate
it. Awesome.
Yeah,
awesome.
I love it.
For you.
Yeah, that's why I kept it. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. My nickname is BZ because 14 letters. It is. It prevents identity theft because somebody is going to misspell it usually.
BZ. All right. Well, I thank you for being here. I thank you for the opportunity to interview you. And always remember our audience here at Reader's Magnet. We share your story with the world.
Thank you so much.
Welcome to the Festival of Storytellers.
I thank everybody that's involved with this process because we know writers need readers and writers need publishers.
Experience is not about the publisher, it is about us, the authors.